Welcome to the Stressless Eating Podcast, where we help diet-obsessed and food-crazed women break themselves out of the food and body prison, end the dieting madness, and take control of their health for good. I'm your host, Rea and Ellington, and this podcast is about answering one question. How can you heal your relationship with food and your body and take a practical approach to this whole self-love journey, but without all that restriction, obsession, and shame, and without needing years of therapy to do so? If you want to know the answer, you're in the right place. All this information is 100% free, so please subscribe to and review our podcast. Well, hello and welcome back to the Stressless Eating Podcast. I'm excited because I have an amazing woman here who's actually been on the podcast before in the What's God Got to Do With It episode 2 with her husband, Kevin. I'm here with Rea Queen, and we're going to be having some deep and awesome conversations. So welcome back to the podcast, Rea.
Thank you, Leanne. It's good to be back. I'm so grateful to be here.
Absolutely. Well, we are going to, when we started this second season of the podcast, I've reached out to you immediately. I was like, I want you to be one of the first guests on our season because obviously it's a continuation of the messaging that we've been talking about, really helping people heal from diet obsession and food craziness and really carving out who they are, their identity, their self-image, seeing themselves for who they are, taking a more practical approach to self-love. And I always believe that the more voices we can have kind of intertwining into that. And so you and Kevin were obviously a massive part of my faith journey. So shared that on What's God Got to Do With It part 1. You and Kevin gifted us with your presence on part 2. And so the whole kind of theme of this season is really, continuing on with the messages from season 1, but also really what would it look like if we were speaking to a future generation? What would it look like if the messages that women of today need to hear, where it's kind of like the cure for how culture has indoctrinated us into standards of what beauty is and what self-love is and what acceptance is, and really, gone through a healing process now as adults, what if those same principles and messages became the prevention for teenagers and for little girls? Because it's, as I'm growing and learning, I'm realizing you think it's 15, 16, but really even working with an 11-year-old and 12-year-old, that social brain is really developing. So super important to just start talking about these conversations now and introducing people to the concept of identity and self-worth and all of that. And so many different cool roles for you because, you are, you have an identical twin. So just another woman who is as close to you as possible growing up. You are a mother of 4 children, but also two teenage girls. And then you are also the co-partner and co-pilot of this massive body of humans that you and your husband lead in every single day. So lots of different things to dive in on. So that being said, let's start with you as a woman. I'm curious to know, this concept of identity, self-worth, knowing who you are, knowing your value, knowing your worth. Would you mind just kind of sharing a little bit about that journey, what that was like for you, growing up and on to now?
Okay, yes, that's a big question, but let me see if I can tackle that. I grew up, like you said, I don't know if I guess we'll sort of go here because that's part of my forming of my identity. I grew up with an identical twin, but we were also the oldest of 5 girls. So there were 5 girls growing up together, pretty close in age, in my family. And so, my parents just did a really, really good job of letting each of us know that we were each special in different ways. And a lot of that I've carried on into my parenting. And just what it really boils down to, Leanne, is that you start with who God is. You know who God is. He's love. He's my protector. He's my guide. He's the master planner. He's kind. And when you know who God is, then you can see who you are in light of that. Because everything that God is, we have. And so if God is love, then man, I can live and love other people. If God is wise, I can live with that wisdom and teach other people that. So I think for me, identity comes down to knowing who God is. And in light of that, I know who I am.
Yeah. Wow. And it's just so interesting to hear you say that, because I mean, I didn't grow up like that. I didn't have God. I didn't have this. And for wherever you are, where you're listening, whether it's God, whether it's where I was a few years ago of calling it the universe, higher power, really what I would say is picture this image of unconditional love, unconditional acceptance, whatever you call that. But really, like, what it's like for you grew up with that picture mirrored back to you of that unconditional, of that ... kind of love, that grace kind of love. And so I think for anyone hearing that, what I would say about that is, like, it's not too late to try on that picture right now. And so coming from, and I didn't even know that, so many daughters, right? And in the midst of that being an identical twin, you said that your parents did a really good job of really, individually showing you what your truths were. So what was that like when obviously you got adopted into that thought process from your parents, but what was it like, like your first memory of like identifying who you were in reflection of that unconditional love? Like, did you have struggles in, middle school, high school, all that? And where did that thought process come in for you to remind you who you were?
Yeah. I mean, were there struggles in high school, middle school? Sure there were. Honestly, again, I think that as parents, or as my parents did, it boiled down to like just pouring in that unconditional love as much as a human can unconditionally love, because we're not perfect. So really, we cannot unconditionally love. But as much as we can tap into that unconditional love, they did that for us. And so I just grew up sort of like feeling like if I dreamed it, I could do it. If it was something in my heart, I should go after it. And that idea of dreaming and going after those dreams has actually, I thought I was sort of living that through my, middle school, high school, college life, but that actually has become more of a reality to me in the last 5 years than it ever was. Even though I thought I was dreaming big and living out those things, I'm realizing now that I probably wasn't doing that as much as I could, but now I'm sort of living into that, like, Lord, give me those dreams. God, give me those dreams, and I will go after them. So.
Yeah, what could you tell us a little bit about that? Like what happened a few years ago, and what are you stepping into now in terms of what you know is possible for you now, or you're asking to step into that maybe you didn't have the courage to before? Like what is that?
Yeah. Simply put, it's surrender. And maybe a little bit more in depth on that is just this idea that I don't have to see the scenario play out from start to finish. I don't have to see success at the end. I can just say, okay, here's the dream. Let me take the next step. Let me do the next thing that's in front of me. And because God is such a good, kind, near God, He steps with me. And then the next thing that comes up, I just step. So that has been a process of going, I don't have to see step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5 before I step. All I have to see is step 1.
So when it comes to kind of coming back to you as growing up with 5 girls and a sister, a twin sister, that conversation of comparisonitis, like it's prevalent with everyone. It does. And I always say, I'm like, it doesn't matter how confident you become, how self-assured you become, like you are human, especially as a woman, you are going to notice, we have an entire part of our brain designed to notice like where we're different and equate that to mean good, bad, right, wrong, should, shouldn't. And that's where the work always is, So for you in the world of comparisonitis with all of the female brains in your family, not to mention somebody that, you went to school with every, same age, same everything, what was that like to really carve out your own identity?
Yeah. Yes, that's great. I think, and again, in the middle of all of these things, like in the middle of a high school aged comparison or, whatever, the answers would be very different. But hindsight is 20/20. And so looking back and wisdom that comes in just life, I would say that, yes, there was comparison, just being one of 5 girls, very close in age, just like. However, I believe that there was just a spirit of comparison that pushed us to be better. So it wasn't like it pushed us to be better than, it just pushed us all to be better in the same direction. So we had each other. Yes, sometimes it created some conflict. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. Yeah, sometimes there was conflict with 5 girls, or just comparison that wasn't healthy at times. But in the end, I think that comparison going, if she can do it, I can do it too. And let's do it together. Yeah. And that has become even the way we live as, moms that are doing this mom thing together now. It's like, yeah, we compare, we compare things, but it's to make each other better. Yeah.
Wow. And such a powerful distinction that I don't even know if you just made, because oftentimes we're talking on this podcast about where, comparison is used as a weapon against, right? And you're showing us, but I always say it can be used as a powerful tool. And one of the things that is so cool, and one of the reasons I wanted to interview is because sometimes people don't know how they became the way they are. It just is, but really if you were to kind of reverse engineer how you became, it's like a series of thoughts and habits and beliefs. And so one thing I'm hearing is you know what? I had this healthy level of comparison where it was I could see that there was somebody over there, really right there, close to me, that was doing something a different way, but I never look at it as a reflection upon myself that means that I'm doing something less than. So the big takeaway that I'm hearing and that I want everybody to get is this is a really powerful example of how comparison doesn't have to morph into comparisonitis. It can just be the data of oh, this is what's happening over there, and I don't use it to reflect how poorly I'm doing it. I reflect it as, wow, that's an opportunity of possibility. That's the gap of untapped potential, or a different way of doing it. Yeah. And it really is a matter of not making meaning of what you're seeing. And that's what our brain does. It takes something and we look at it and we give it meaning. And oftentimes, again, if there's a poor self-image, it's a reflection of a negative self. So such a cool, healthy utilization of that. Now, coming into motherhood, and you brought that up too. In motherhood, there's a lot of comparison. Am I a good mom? Am I a bad mom? Am I doing this right? Am I doing it wrong? Where has that healthy use of comparison as a tool come into play for you just carving out your identity as a mom?
Oh, 100% it has. Yeah. I mean, like I said before, it's like I'm in partnership with these other moms, my sisters are some of those moms that I'm in partnership with, but then I've got friends who are kind of on the same life path and the same journey and the same season of life with our kids. And so I would say, yeah, it's totally a partnership where it's hey, I'm feeling this about this situation with my kids. What are you doing? Again, like you said, Leanne, not to make me feel bad, oh, I'm not doing that, but to go, oh, I'm not doing that. That sounds like a great idea. I'll try that. And so, yeah, I think it's a partnership. I think it's a pushing forward instead of holding people back. Yeah.
And what's coming up for me is this is a kind of a call out to all of us is being super mindful around the people that we are surrounding ourselves with. Yes. To be able to be in partnership with other moms that are going through what you're going through, same, but different. And to know that nothing that you're doing is going to be used against you to shame you or to make you feel less than. Yes. That is a product of you surrounding yourself with these amazing people, And so it's one of the things we talk about all the time in my stressless eating program is influence is influence, and if you're hanging around people that are, and nobody can air quotes make you feel a certain way, it's your thoughts that create that. But if you are in an environment of people that have values that are different and that are even just it's not what you say, it's how you say it. If they're saying something in a way that's oh, you're doing that with your child, that is a shaming tone, And so I think it's really a testament to you having the ability to have partnership is a reflection of who you're choosing to surround yourself with. So anyone who's listening to this, if you are, surrounding yourself with people that are kind of contributing to the negativity in your own brain, you do have a choice in who you surround yourself with in both the positive light, just like you're talking to your kids about the importance of who they hang out with, Yes. So I love that this is all coming up because it's one of the number one things I hear, that mom shame, I feel like a bad mom.
It's real. Mom shame is real. I mean, I'm not trying to paint a picture that that every time I feel that tinge of comparison, I'm like, oh no, it's only going to make me stronger and you stronger too. I have to fight that sometimes, where I'm like, it's not about, what can I take from that will help me, that will make me stronger, that will make me better, and how can I encourage them? So I'm not saying it's ever what's the word you're using? Comparisonitis. Yeah. So that comes into play sometimes, but you fight against it. Absolutely. I want to share real quick, as you're talking about who you surround yourself with, and I've got a sweet, sweet friend. We've been friends since 9th grade. Her name's Stacia, and we decided, not together, but just it happened that we were going through the same kind of like daily 365 daily devotional at the same time. Yeah. And one morning, we both sort of started and, whatever. And one morning, maybe 10 or so days in, I don't really remember, but I was just like, I would love to hear Stacia's thoughts on what we read each day. And so I texted her. I was like, hey, do you want to just give a takeaway every day? And you know what? Some people could look at that and go, oh, you just wanted to compare. You wanted to, say the words that seemed better, or you wanted to go, oh God, I wish I would have seen that, man. What she said was so amazing. I'm not doing something right. But it's not like that at all. She says something and I'm like, yes, I didn't see that. Oh my gosh, that just built such, it just built me up so much. Or I'll say something to her and she'll be like, oh my gosh, yeah, I didn't even see that. That is amazing. So again, we're in a partnership, and we're pushing each other forward, and we're building in each other just more knowledge of the word, or whatever it is, more knowledge of how to parent better, how to be a better wife, how to be a better friend. I mean, so that's just a real life, actually, example of,
Absolutely, yeah. I love that. And that's the thing, what I was taking away as you were saying that is, I was like, when you get off the phone with her, because it's over the phone, right? Or text, yeah. When you're interacting with her, it adds value to your life. It adds energy versus, we've all been in that room with somebody that we're like, I did something, the life gets sucked out of me. And, anybody listening, on this podcast, I talk a lot about that social brain and interactions with others. And some people, their first thought is what does that have to do with my body, my health, my food? And it's everything. It's everything. How you feel on a day-to-day basis, your self-worth. These are the things that cause, first of all, your nervous system is working 24 hours a day, but also, these are the things that cause us to feel lonely, isolated, to numb out, to distract, to soothe ourselves with food. It's all interconnected. And oftentimes when this big picture stuff, the relational stuff with self and with others gets healed, and we open ourselves up to really invite ourselves into a higher level conversation. And part of that is knowing you're worthy of having people like Stacia in your life, and feeling no. And also being able to be aware, I've had experiences over the past year or so, throughout my life, but specifically this past year as I've kind of up-leveled my own values. And I realized, you know what? There's just values, and I'm not making these people wrong, but there's values that I just don't want to be around, because energetically, it's I don't want to talk about going out and getting drunk all the time. And I don't want to, and even the diet mentality, being around people that are oh, I can't eat that, or I'm so fat. It wears on you when you're trying to up-level. So energy is everything, and the values have to align. And that's the thing, you get to choose who you're around, and it influences everything.
Absolutely.
Segueing into you as a mom, obviously you have your own influential properties that are taking place with your kids, but then, being the witness to seeing who your girls are hanging out with, and obviously you have 2 boys as well, but, we're talking specifically about the girls now, but what has that been witnessing them crafting and carving out their own self-perception, their own identity? What are you seeing? Because I'm so fascinated by this up-and-coming generation. I can't even imagine what my life would have been if I was looking through the lens of Instagram and TikTok, So what's it been watching you watch them grow, and where do you feel you've been able to have the influence? Where have you had to kind of bite your tongue a little bit? What's that process been like?
Yeah. Oh, it's a process, and it's ongoing for sure, because Raleigh's 17 and Camden she'll be 16, almost 16. So 16 and 17. Again, for us, for our family, the conversation is first, how do you view God? I mean, that just has to be our conversation first. And so getting that settled in their hearts is so important. And so we have, that's been ongoing. And then as they start to mature and start to enter into, middle school, high school, where it becomes a little bit more evident, or comparison or identity is kind of more of a conversation, then it's like, okay, we have kept this open line of communication their entire lives, and now this line of communication is wide open, and so the conversations are just wide open. I mean, that would be what I would say is of great importance, is that we have just a wide open conversation. I'll just ask random questions, and sometimes it frustrates them, like, Mom, why are you asking me that? I'm like, because I want to be able to ask you anything. And I want you to know, like, you can answer me however you want to answer me. And so, but as far as like Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, whatever, they are active on all of those platforms. I mean, I don't mean active, like have like followers. I mean, they just are on there and know what's going on. But it's a conversation. Like, what did you like? I glance over, like, okay, tell me about that. What's going on there? Like, is that appropriate? Is that something that's going to fill you? Or is that going to be positive for you? Is that going to make you better? Let's talk about that, And I mean, they're still in our home. And so we have, I don't want to use the word control. That's a little harsh. We're still their parents. We're still guiding them. We're still helping them grow and be able to leave the house, with all that they need to be successful. And so there are days where I'm like, yep, phones are off, like, done. You've had enough. That's too much. Like that is not going to be good for you. So we're going to turn them off. So yeah, there's things like that where we're not afraid to say, like, I'm telling you right now, we're done for today.
Yeah. Cause again, influence is influence, and just like, obviously you don't want to move into that world of like being the helicopter parent and controlling, but also you want them to know, like, hey, there's a time and a place for this. There's boundaries. Yep. There's, we don't want it to overtake. And it sounds like you've done a great job of that balance. So. You're like, we'll find out in a few years. Yes, no, I'm just kidding. But I'm curious to know what, and here's the thing. I know that when I talk to my clients, it's a mixed bag. And for me, it was a mixed bag. Like, I grew up around girls that never had any food and body struggles. And then I myself had them. And now, I'm surrounded by women every single day who it started very young. Like, what are you noticing is the conversation about it? What conversations have come up in your house about food, body, just things being different? Like, maybe it's not your kids, but maybe their friends are struggling with it. Like, what's the dialogue been?
Wow. Okay. So this is, I'm just trying to be real delicate here. There is a pattern in our home where Kevin and I are, as far as body goes, we are very much like health, not what you look like. I mean, that's what we say all the time. Like, you going out for a run, you'll see some benefits in your body, but it is healthy, mind, body, spirit. So I'll be honest, I love to work out, and I do it for a lot of reasons. I do it, but mostly I do it so that my mind is clear and my health is great. My heart is good. And then the benefits are that I look good and I feel good, or I look okay and I feel good. You know what I'm saying? I don't mean, but sure. Yeah. So do I encourage my kids to be active? Totally. Have they all taken me up on that? Not 100%. Do I still say, I'll help you. Like, what do you need from me? What's going to make it fun for you? I don't want it to be like this punishment, this like awful like thing, but I do want them to be active for the benefits of health and mind and soul, and truly. And then, that confidence sort of kind of comes with that sometimes, and not that's not the only way you get confidence, but it does. And just seeing that they can start something and finish it, that's big. Right? I mean, so those are the conversations around body image in our house.
Yeah. Man, that is so huge because, I'm always talking about how it's not the content. It's not about the food. It's not about the fitness. It's about the intent. And so the intent for me was always, it's about weight loss. It's about looking a certain way. And the word health got mixed up with skinny, with fit. Right. And sometimes, I've shared on this podcast before, I call it now my cost of skinny. Like it took me in the opposite direction of health, trying to achieve skinny, and the opposite of direction of health, trying to achieve beauty or my perception of it. So I love that you're coming to it from this place of A, it's this health conversation, and B, I love how you said it's this mind, body, soul, spirit conversation. Because if somebody said to me, hey, Leanne, let's go for a walk because you are going to feel so much better in your head and your heart, it would have been a different conversation, So you're inviting them into this 3-dimensional conversation, and then instead of coming from a place of like, hey, you need to do this, it's like, hey, what do you need from me? How can I help you? How can I support you? I love that. And I think it's important for people on this program that we hear a lot from people who struggle with this stuff. And again, it's one of those things. It's like, well, the people that don't struggle, what are they thinking about? What are they talking about? What are the conversations? And that's one of the reasons I also wanted to interview is I've met your family. Like you guys have a very just like 3-dimensional health centered family, and it's not obsessive. It's a healthy version of health. And so I think it's really important that we understand the conversations that and again, it sounds like you are immersed in this like unconditional accepting love. And really, and I've been very vocal on this podcast that for the majority of my life, God was nowhere in existence. And then as soon as I started from that place, not of like hey, where can I invite God in a little bit? It's like start at the start of this foundation of these eyes that like we as humans will never be able to have that much compassion and love. And so again, wherever you are in your conversation, whoever's listening to this right now, whether it's a God conversation, an energy conversation, a universe, a higher power, whatever you want to call it, or maybe it's just, with some of my clients, I'm like, hey, borrow the eyes of your fairy godmother. Like, what would she say? Like, if you like meet yourself where you are, in your version of reality, but also your version of using your imagination, what would it look like if you started with borrowing the eyes of unconditional love and acceptance, and then had the conversation about health, and then had the conversation about your body, and then had the conversation about your identity? It's a game changer. So that being said, if you were to, if your daughters were listening right now and any future daughters were listening, what's the one thing that you would want them to know? Like the timeless wisdom, maybe like, I wish I knew this, that I know now kind of type advice, or just wisdom that has really, helped you, grounded you, or that maybe again, you wish you knew when you were a younger version of yourself.
Oh gosh. That's a big question.
I know. No pressure.
Yeah, totally pressure. Right now in this moment, that's how I'll preface this. Right now in this moment, the way that I'd answer that is I would, and this sounds so cliche, but I am so wholehearted when I say this. I would look at them and I would say, you are enough. You are enough. And then I'd put a comma and then I'd say, and you lack nothing. And so that would be, and I tell my girls that, and my boys, I tell my girls that all the time. They are enough and they lack nothing. Go, do what your heart's telling you to do, and that's in every realm. Yeah.
And I think that's just like the kind of thing that we think like, oh, when I lose the weight, then I'll be enough. Or when I get the job that I want, or get into the college I want, or find the man of my dreams or woman of my dreams, or whatever it is, then I'll be enough, And it's like, no, comma, you lack nothing. It's like right now, period, end of sentence, not when this happens or when X and Y collide. It's like a right now conversation.
Right now. That's right.
Yeah, so good, so good. Yeah. So speaking to, because I'm always speaking to that voice of like, okay, let's talk to the healthy skeptics. If somebody doesn't have God in their life right now, what would be your invitation in the identity conversation? Like if you were to invite somebody and it's not a God conversation necessarily, but it's like that, again, that picture of love. Like what would you say is the message that would have resonated with you, or that would meet people where they are in that conversation?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would certainly first invite them into a God conversation, to be honest. I would. but without saying maybe so many words, it would be the same conversation, Leanne. I'm serious. I would just, with as much grace as I could, I would just want them to know that there is nothing that they've done or said or acted, in or any of that has made them too far gone for a start today. I mean, truly, my worldview is a biblical worldview. And so the truth is the truth to me. And so there's a scripture that says, your mercies are new every morning. Your compassions never fail. Great is your faithfulness. And so I might share that with them. There are new mercies every day. I was just praying that this morning. I'm just saying, like, I love the Lord and but I was just thanking him for his new mercies that every single day, the things that we feel like we quote unquote lost yesterday, which we don't really lose anything, but the things we lost yesterday, maybe we felt like we lost our peace yesterday, or we lost our patience with our kids yesterday. Today, he's resurrecting all that. He's resurrecting our peace and he's resurrecting our patience. We maybe lost hope in a situation, but today, because his mercies are new, he's resurrecting that hope. So we're never without it. It feels like we are, but we're never without it. So I tell them that.
Yeah, and just to speak to that, like we might not see it, but it's always there. Right. So it's like you just have to turn your eyes upward, and it's like what I'm also hearing from what you just said is like it's never too late to start over. It's never too late to say, you know what, I'm done punishing myself. I'm done shaming myself. Like there is, and you use the word grace, and one of the definitions of grace that just has always, and it kind of goes along with your comma and comma definition from a minute ago, is that it's undeserving kind of love and acceptance. Like even when you think you don't deserve it, you have it kind of love. And most people, I don't want to say most people, I didn't ever experience that growing up. And a lot of people have never experienced that. And so what if there was this love, like no matter what you think you've done, no matter who you think you've been, no matter how messed up or far gone you think you are, it's never too late to start over. You have everything you need right now. And all you have to do is look up, and see a new light and open your eyes to possibility. And I will totally plug What's God Got to Do With It, part 1, because ladies and some gentlemen that are listening to this, if you have a skeptical viewpoint or you wonder if you're the only person that'll never have it, like trust me, I was there, I get it. And there is always a place to be met where you are. So definitely check that out if you are one of those people. And I think even if you don't necessarily connect to God, like we can all try on this picture, this just unconditional, like you have the worthiness right now, go forth and prosper kind of mentality, but we have to choose it, and part of it is like kind of getting out of that victim mode, that victimhood of like life is happening to me. I have no influence over who I'm being. And it's like, no, we get to choose our thoughts. We get to choose how we want to show up despite what's going on. So such a powerful conversation. I love it. I love it. So thank you so much for being here. Anything else that's on your heart? What else was in your prayer session this morning that you want to teach us about? I'm like, tell me more.
I'll tell you all about it. Hang on, let me get my journal. I'm just kidding. That's from me and the Lord. But no, I do want to follow up, Leanne. What you're saying is so beautiful about looking up. And, I would just say when you look up, you're looking into the eyes of Jesus. He is waiting with open arms. So if you've never, I just would be remiss not to say that because it's on my heart. So if you've never known that, you've never even thought that would be for you, I would encourage you just to look up and just say the name Jesus. He will meet you, and then find somebody who can guide you into what the next steps are. Leanne would be a perfect hostess for that, host in the presence of the Lord. But that's what I would say. And let me just also one quick thing. There's a book called Every Moment Holy. Have you ever read that, Leanne? Okay. That influenced my prayer time this morning. So I want to give credit where credit is due. The Holy Spirit uses lots of things, and this book was what influenced my prayer time this morning about the newness and the resurrecting. So Every Moment Holy is the name of the book. I mean, it's a great book. It's a great book. So
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. If you want to hear more, check out What's God Got to Do with It Part 2, where Rea was on here with Kevin, her husband. And I have a feeling she'll be back because I just keep stalking her until she comes back. And so here we are. So it's a great fit. Awesome. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to today's show. If you like what you heard and you're interested in breaking out of your own food, body, and diet prison, here's what I want you to do next. Head on over to stresslesseating.com. That's stresslesseating.com and sign up to watch the Stressless Eating webinar, where I'll walk you through the exact 5-step game plan my female clients use to conquer emotional eating, self-sabotage, and finally heal themselves from the restrictive all-or-nothing diet mentality for good, but without obsessing or spending years in therapy to address it. I've laid it all out for you there in 5 easy steps. Remember, healing your relationship with food and your body does not happen by itself. You need expert guidance to make it happen, and we've helped clients all over the world take back their power from the food and find true and lasting freedom while enjoying life and warm chocolate chip cookies along the way. To see if we can help you do the same, head on over to stresslesseating.com. I'm Leanne Ellington, and I'll see you next time.